think that, whenever we're giving, it actually warms our hearts. It's such an interesting time and an interesting phenomena. How the psychological effects of giving affect our own happiness as well. At the heart of TPF, there's a simple idea. We're trying to connect donors in the United States with meaningful causes in Turkey and beyond. Um, over the past decade, this idea has evolved into a dynamic network of donors and nonprofits working together, and we're creating really high impact long-term change, which is very exciting. Today, Turkish Philanthropy Fund stands as the leading Turkish American community foundation, championing social investments that transform lives both locally and globally. And every donor's journey with TPF is unique. And together, these stories have helped TPF raise over, get this, $80 million since its inception, which is
Wow.
huge. I'm so proud. I'm so excited to be part of this journey. And every donor who has donated to TPF or through TPF, so there's two ways you can actually work with TPF. You can donate to TPF and TPF can disseminate funds, or through TPF for your own personal passion projects. Every donor is adding to this journey, and we thought you would like to meet some of them and to hear about the different ways that they've been collaborating with TPF. So, in celebration of our community, we're going to be today meeting with Ikuro, who's also one of our board members, Bacchus Boyacıgiller, who herself is involved in now philanthropy, but carrying on the legacy of her father and mother, Ziya and Nakia Boyacıgiller, and her sister as well, and Timur Cüceoğlu Yarnal. Everyone's going to be sharing their personal philanthropic stories and what creating a positive change in the world means to them. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to kick off really quickly with Ike. As our board member, you're closest to TPF, I'm thinking. So maybe we can do 2 rounds of conversations is what I was thinking. Maybe the first round, we can talk about how you're working with TPF today. And then in the second round of conversations, we'll deep dive into the philosophy of giving. So Ike, can you tell us a little bit about your personal initiatives with TPF, which are fascinating, and let us know where you are, what your vision is, how it's going.
Thanks for having me. First of all, Didem, it's always nice to see you and my fellow donors. I think I'll maybe try to start with answering the question that brought us together today. Why I give. And for me, the answer is really simple. It's 2 words. It's gratitude and it's hope. I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I've had in my life that brought me here today, all through the generosity of others. So I feel like, I need to give it back. I was always the scholarship kid. I grew up in a very middle-class family. I grew up in Üsküdar in a very modest neighborhood, but I got to go to some of the best schools in the world. I went to Üsküdar Amerikan Lisesi for high school. Then I studied computer engineering at Boğaziçi Üniversitesi. Then I got a Fulbright scholarship to study computer science at the graduate level at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, one of the top 5 computer science schools. It's been an incredible journey, and I think I owe it. I owe it to give that opportunity to other people. The second is hope. I am hopeful for a better world. I have a lot of faith that the next generation is going to do better than us. I think countries are going to do better. I think societies are going to do better. And I want to be a part of building that hope for others. In Turkish, we have a saying, elini taşın altına koymak. You want to be part of that. That's why I give. That's my personal giving story. I think why I give with TPF, again, I think the answer is pretty simple for me. It's all about trust and transparency and about credibility. It's such a personal thing, giving. You're giving your hard-earned dollars. You want to make sure you work with someone that you trust.
Yeah. I love how you set up the whole topic and framed it so beautifully. Can you actually also give us an example of how you're working with TPF?
Yes, I'm going to talk about maybe the last project I have with TPF. I recently started a Turkish American orchestra, and it is a 54-person symphony orchestra based in the United States. About half the musicians are Turkish musicians that are professional musicians based in the United States, and the other half are Americans. And I started this because I'm not a musician, I'm an engineer, but I have a lot of respect for music and musicians. I feel like music is at the heart of the culture. I think it's that one thing that brings societies together. No matter what your educational background is, no matter, what your wealth is, the music is the one thing that people bring people together. And I wanted an institution in the United States that could bring people together of all ages, of all backgrounds, and that plays music of all genres in symphonic form. And I started the orchestra with a Turkish female music director and conductor, Nisan Ak. The two of us started this journey at the beginning of this year. And we've recently had the first concert in October, coinciding with the 101st anniversary of the setting up of our republic. And to have an orchestra that's women-led, where the female musicians are front and center, where we're giving a platform to musicians, and we're also providing scholarships for emerging musicians so that they have a chance to succeed in the world, has been incredibly exciting for me. And, it's a thing that I think will bring people together, continue to bring people together. Like TPF has been an amazing partner in terms of helping me start up the orchestra, and also like helping me start up the giving fund that is supporting the orchestra at a financial level too. So I'm super excited, and there are other things that I've done with TPF. That's like only the last example.
I mean, in and of itself, it's such a beautiful example because it has so many layers that you can unpackage, right? You can unfold, whether it's women, you said led, there's the Turkish American element of it. So you're playing across genres, but it's a Turkish orchestra. So maybe it has also bringing Turkish music to American culture
Yes.
as well. So there's so many different levels of give back. They have scholarships involved.
Yes.
It's really a holistic approach through one project of giving back. So congratulations to you for conceiving the project and the having the will to see it through. And hopefully we'll also be able to garner more support for your orchestra and keep it going through TPF and through the donor community here. It's wonderful, beautiful.
Thank you.
But it's such
Thank
a great idea. So if anyone has a burning passion project, bring it to TPF. Let's see what we can do, essentially. Bacchus, may I jump over to you? So your giving story is a little bit different, and you're working with TPF in a completely different way. One of those ways is to honor the legacy of your father, Ziya Boyacı, who's one of my favorite human beings in the entire universe. You're really lucky to have him as a dad. And your mother too, she's just as beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about you, your family, and what you guys are doing with TPF and why you guys are giving.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my family story here today. TPF has been very, very important in both my mother and father's lives since its inception. It was very important. After the 1999 earthquake was actually my dad's first time doing a matching campaign with his company to help the earthquake victims in Turkey and to build a project. And that's when he first realized how important it was to have a credible nonprofit to be able to give the money through, and that's kind of where the idea for TPF first came about for my parents. They're like, I wish we had something that was credible that would direct everyone to. So it's always been there in the background. And then with my father's, when he passed away in 2014, we wanted to create a legacy for him, put all of our grief into something that was more productive and that could give us some hope in the world, and channel his legacy into something for positive change. And so at that time, Sina Afra, an entrepreneur in Turkey, was starting the entrepreneurial fund, Girişimcilik Vakfı, and my mom and him had a meeting to start the Ziya Boyacılar Fellowship Fund. And over the past 10 years, through TPF, I think that they did a donor advisor fund and then through that, we've been able to support over 20 scholars. And it's been really amazing to get to see these bright young minds get educated. They're usually engineers like my father was. and teaching them how to be change makers in society.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, your father for the entrepreneurship ecosystem was such a spearhead, and he was our wise man essentially when we started all these different entrepreneurship initiatives. So it's so elegant that it comes back to entrepreneurship again. And, even when you're doing entrepreneurial education, not everybody needs to start a company, but entrepreneurial thinking in and of itself is a huge asset and survival skill for so many. So the more people, especially engineers, that we can get that too, that
And
mindset shift. Yeah.
he spent much of his life, like later on, the last 10 years of his life, mentoring young people.
Mhm.
And he just really believed in supporting young people because he thought, just like Ülkü was saying, that he believes that the younger generation, we rely on them to create a better future. So it's just very impactful that we're able to do it now, continue it after he's gone. And a very cute story, like I still hear of young people who know my father's name because
Yes.
of this fellowship fund and also because of his different writings and stuff. And maybe for Timur, it's a similar thing, but you continue to live on in this sense. So that's very special for us.
Thank you, Bacchus. I know that story in and of itself is a very emotional one. So it's wonderful that we can actually keep building on his own legacy, on Ziabi's legacy. Timur, can we jump over to you and learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're working with TPF, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really humbled to be here. These are such powerful stories. I mean, Ulku and Belkis and that sharing that makes me kind of emotional as I'm listening to it as well. Actually, I think many of you know my father was Doğan Cüceloğlu. I can hear his voice in my head right now saying, so powerful. These stories are so powerful, just as he would say.
Yeah.
With that as a background, for me, I feel humble. I don't know that I'm doing enough, comparatively with these two. But with my father's legacy, Doğan Cüceloğlu on that, and then on my mother's side as well, for me, giving is honoring parents and the legacy, and I've been fortunate to have some, career success, but I do really look back on some very difficult times. And as I talk, even here at Amazon, as I'm working at Amazon, you know, I identify as a lower income immigrant. I came to the U.S. when I was 3. Um, my father was going through a very difficult time financially. I think he writes in his books that he only had, less than $10 in a bank account when he first came to the U.S. in 1980. And after my parents' divorce, my mother was having tremendous difficulty as well. So my father, in terms of, his legacy there, always spoke of giving as this incredible way of uh, of of fulfillment and honoring one's legacy. Interestingly, my parents met at University of Illinois, as Ulku just discussed.
Mhm.
And then with my mother, I mean, female entrepreneurship is so vital. My mother, actually, who had a linguistics background, she taught herself to be a mainframe programmer in the 1980s. She was one of the first female engineers, and her big break was that she got accepted into a teaching and scholarship program at a local business in Southern California that actually then trained her to become a mainframe engineer. So my mother was a single mom, raising 3 kids, and really became, because of one of these programs that do that. So very important for me to support female founders and female entrepreneurship. I have 2 daughters, myself, and so that's part of why I give. But coming back to my father, and I'm so honored to be in part of the conversation as it relates to Turkey, because Turkey is such a special place in the world and has such a special focal point. So we have this, massively outsized impact, in my view. And so what I've done, my father published 21 books. I've done a couple of small things, but for me, I donated a forest in my father's name after he passed in 2021 through
Mhm.
Tema Vakfi, which felt
Mhm.
great. It was a wonderful way to honor him. And then I published a book about my father's impact on my life, and I've donated the proceeds from that book to TPF, which I would love to do more and do more to be part of that discussion. But that has been really a spiritual exercise for me. I think
Mhm.
my father said, and maybe even uh, the Dalai Lama maybe has popularized this in the West, but there's a huge difference between smart, selfish, and foolish, selfish people. And my father maybe embodied this in his book Savastya when he talked about a warrior mentality. But the foolish, selfish are ones that are going to take and think that this is going to make them happier. And we can never really get happiness through material goods, right? We can never have enough. But the wise, selfish people are those that realize that by giving and through acts of personal fulfillment that have nothing to do with material goods, that's the most fulfilling thing possible. So I think as we talk about giving, I think it's the wise, selfish attack, and that's how I look at it. I'm being very wisely selfish if I can, because the more I can give, I definitely feel happier. And certainly not saying that I do the most or most very humbling to be in this group, but that's my frame of giving.
I mean, I love every single thing that you just shared with us because, first of all, you talked about the magnitude of giving, right? It can be big, it can be small, but at the end of the day, it creates a multiplier effect. And everybody who's received some type of a boost, whether it was a scholarship, whether it was a training program that you were eligible for, whatever that is, it multiplies over the course of the journey. So what you think is a small thing actually can become a huge thing because it snowballs into the multiplier effect.
When I was accepted to Stanford undergraduate, my father was teaching at Cal State Fullerton, and he thought that maybe I would go to Cal State Fullerton because we would get scholarship through his program and we could live with him. I said, "No, Dad, I really want to go to Stanford." It's like, "Well, how are we going to afford that? This is going to be very hard." And we needed scholarship to go to Stanford. Man, I needed a boost at that time. So it made a
Mhm.
huge impact on my life. And that came through donations. And it was tough for us. I mean, I
Yeah.
came out of university with debt that my father was able to pay off for me actually after graduate school. So yeah, that type
Mhm.
of a boost and that type of giving has made a huge impact on my life.
It's fascinating. Exactly. So I mean, that whole like the magnitude of giving, and then I think when I opened today's discussion, I was talking about the interesting psychology of giving, right? It really is this virtuous circle. It looks like you're doing something good for society and you're so generous, but actually, the level of satisfaction and serenity that it brings you is something else, right? So, in some way, it is the smart selfishness. Like you're giving, okay, but you're actually also being selfish because it's so personally rewarding in this circular economy of philanthropy. And it's fascinating how emotional the conversation does become. Becca, did you want to jump in?
Well, I was also going to say, like, since I'm Turkish American, like, I realized that there are things that I want to help in Turkey, but it makes more sense for me to do it via TPF in the US since I get the tax credit. And
Right.
it's a selfish thing when you were saying being selfish, there,
Uh-huh.
but it's
Yeah.
also amazing to see how impactful uh the money that you put into like the donor fund as it grows. Yeah, and
Hmm.
it accumulates in there, then we're able to constantly funnel it to different projects. And it's really, really special, I think, to get to be able to use that money
I
for
mean,
the
when
good.
you're actually when you plan it that way,
Yeah,
if it's
exactly.
planned, then all of a sudden you can actually keep building your donor advised fund. It generates interest that keeps growing the funds that you can then leverage into other projects, which is a very important point, actually. So being savvy about giving is also something that TPF can help with, right? So that you can actually multiply your own capacity for giving and for doing other things. We got a little bit spiritual, we got a little bit emotional, and I do want to do another tour of conversations about the power of passion in philanthropy. Like, there's the power of passion, there's personal versus collective impact, like helping one person versus helping a community. Um, there are different things that we could talk about, but let's go back to Uki for a second. You do passion projects with TPF. Um, can you share more about how you choose these initiatives? These are your personal values. And why do you believe a personal kind of connection or motivation is so important in giving, or maybe even essential?
Yeah, it is because giving is so personal, and you need to stay connected to it. Like giving is not just about writing a check. For me, it's about like seeing it through and seeing the impact and seeing it grow. That gives me the personal satisfaction out of it. And maybe like I'll tell you a story. I think one of my first like giving experiences was when I had my second child, Sinan. He's today 18 years old. I was pregnant for him. And my first son was he was 2 years old. And as I'm like bringing new people into this world, I thought about like all the opportunities that I've had and education I had. And here's like I'm bringing two small human beings to this world. And at that point was when I first set up a scholarship fund, and I did it at the university that like gave me a lot of chances at UIUC, the University of Illinois. And
Yeah.
I wanted to give back because it was a land grant university that has given me the scholarship. I had all these opportunities, and that's like when I did like I think my first like serious philanthropy.
Hmm.
That was like when Sinan was born.
Hmm.
But this summer, I took Sinan, he's now 18, he was 17 at the time,
Oh,
a
wow. Yeah.
TPF donor trip to Hatay. So that same
Mm.
kid, he came with me. He's a 17-year-old, teenager, Turkish American, born and raised here.
Mhm.
And what a fantastic, experience it was for him. Obviously TPF has done enormous amount of work in the earthquake region, and to see that
Yeah.
devastation still continue in the region was heartbreaking in so many ways. But it was so, so, so uplifting. The work that are done by the nonprofits that
Yeah.
TPF is supporting on the ground. And for what a great experience for a 17-year-old to see that on the ground, people that went back home to help their communities,
Mm.
volunteers who gave up their jobs to come do work in there. And I still get the goosebumps just being there with my son, 18 years after that experience, being that. And, he came back from that experience and he started applying to colleges. And now he wants a career in giving back to communities. So like for
Fascinating.
me, it's
Mhm.
such a personal thing that almost ties together all aspects of life. I think with giving, you have to be passionate, and it's almost like you have to carry it through. For me, it's that. And that's, I think, what I like the most about TPF, right? It's not just about writing a check. It's about staying connected to the causes, making sure you support the causes as well, giving those nonprofits a
Mm.
hand in operating more effectively, including the donors in that process so that we can see exactly what's going on and that the dollars are going to the right places and they are having the impact. To me, that's what makes the TPF relationship special.
I mean, what you just explained reminded me. Do you remember Mr. Rogers? It was very important as an immigrant coming to, being in the United States. Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers for the children and even for the parents, I think, to get acclimated to American culture. But Mr. Rogers used to talk about, when there's something scary is happening or when something, tragic is happening, to look for the helpers. And that was the advice he was giving parents and children: look for the helpers. And when you see the helpers, just as you described, it's transformative because you see, yes, there is some despair here, but there's also all these helpers, so there's still hope here. It's a fascinating, again, emotional experience, exposure, to the point where your son is now considering a career in the nonprofit sector. That's amazing. That's also really amazing. I'm going to jump from where you just left off and jump over to Timur, actually. Timur, can we talk a little bit about the difference from your point of view about the difference between helping one person through a scholarship versus collective community action? I mean, do you have a philosophy on personal
Yeah.
versus collective impact?
I, um, yes, I do. I don't know that again, humbled to be in part of this conversation. I think hearing about the stories and the passion projects is very humbling. I think in terms of the personal or I think my perspective would be both are so important and maybe for some different reasons. But for me, a personal project, and I think just as Uluku talked about how important it was to take that trip and see her son actually experience what had happened. And to me, that's so vital because part of the wise selfish is to fill our own tanks. And very much so that experience is vital and brings so much energy both to the people you visited, but also to you, and there's gonna be more giving. For me, again, that example, I will never, ever, ever forget the experience of being in Turkey near Adana about 18 months ago, where I actually visited the small forest that I donated in my father's name, and actually feeling the trees and seeing those small trees, and realizing as the person talked to me that there's this little 2-foot tree that already has a 6 or 7 foot root in the ground.
Mhm.
And it was maybe over 108 degrees at the time. And I briefly put on a jacket for a photo and I almost fainted, and I'm like laughing, but that is such a deep experience to realize the power of life and knowing that the trees are growing that. So to me, that's the personal
Mhm.
level. But then with TPF being in the US, and by the way, I would say that my father also said, managing your finances is managing your life. It's smart to do that. That's not self. That's, tax is
Mhm.
that's where the money should go. But to me, with TPF being in the US, with the transparency, with laws we have, it's also the US and the ability to give from the US
Mhm.
is so important from a cross-cultural understanding perspective, right? It's both a chance at scale to talk to, as a Turkish American, explaining my culture and my background is easier, and it's there. There's understanding and there's communication. There are also misunderstandings, and I think
Mhm.
this is a chance at scale to bridge that gap. And for me, these at scale projects are so important from a communication, potentially from a press standpoint. We have two beautiful cultures, and the lack of understanding and communication can be tragic. And the actual communication in my father's first book, which to me is still the most impactful one for me, Insana Insana, it's person to person, but we're
Mhm.
talking about these commonalities and seeing that, happen at scale, hearing about that. The earthquake crossed every potential misunderstanding. I mean, the earthquake's such a tragedy, and I got
Mhm.
so much support from friends. Everybody wanted to help, and I think TPF being a
Mhm.
vehicle for that, so vital, and it gave people access to feeling like they are doing something. So without that bridge, I don't know what we would have done.
Mhm.
And that's where I would see some of the differences playing in between that personal and that at scale giving.
Yeah, interesting. It's also interesting that you've all touched on this a little bit, but like you could just started a symphony, an orchestra. Um, but in the past, she's also worked with other grassroots level organizations as well. Bacchus talked about Sina Afra's Girişimcilik Vakfı, the entrepreneurship organization. Timur talked about supporting the forest through Tema, if I remember correctly. So I'm going to jump over to Bacchus to just a deep dive there a little bit. Could you share your family's thinking about why you're collaborating with organizations? Like there's the Legacy Fund, but you're also collaborating through other organizations. What's the logic of that?
Oh, well, I mean, there's amazing projects that we can help to support. For example, my aunt is a very passionate, she's a doctor in training, and she volunteered starting in the 99 earthquake. As soon as it happened, she was on the ground helping there. And same in Hatay, right away, she was like first to get to the site. She wasn't in Hatay, but she's working
Yeah.
tirelessly with
Mhm.
Nasu Maruki for Akut Vakfı. And that for they're the credible people who are on the ground finding where help was needed. For our
Right.
family, both my parents are educators, and we believe in the power of education. Like it changed my parents' life for the better. It's, you can't even calculate how much it changed their lives. And education is our biggest thing that we want to always be giving to. We've
Mhm.
identified that when you educate the children, its impact is like better than giving to almost any other cause, because it will solve every other problem if everybody's well educated, is the way that our family
Logic, sure.
believes. Kind of following in Atatürk's footsteps, I think, we really
Exactly.
embrace that. So with Okut, my aunt went and she was doing an amazing project. And my mom has had a very bad illness for 7 years. She can't actually go out and help in the field, right?
Physically,
But she
sure.
could find my aunt's project and believe that they were going to set up a school in Hatay. And so my mom immediately wanted to channel her, funds to that, for example. So
Yeah.
we've been able to have a very big impact in an area that we really believe in, that is very close to our hearts. And now we get to see those children going to school, doing different, my aunt sends us videos from there all the time, and my mom gets to watch it and be a part of it, even if she can't do really much
Physically,
right now
sure.
in her life.
Mentally, she's there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mentally, emotionally, she's there.
that's one
Exactly.
example. We also really support young women leaders, developing the
Mhm.
leaders of tomorrow through Sema Bashol is my mom's best friend from Üsküdar Amerikan, and she has an amazing thing. Yeah, just like Ülke, your school's
Yeah.
amazing.
We
Gotta
love
get
Üsküdar
right?
America.
Yeah. Sema teyze is a very successful businesswoman. And then when she retired, she dedicated her retirement to founding Değişim Liderleri Derneği DLD. And my
Wow.
mom has been a part of it supporting it since its founding. And yeah, helping young college women become empowered leaders. And that's another foundation we love supporting through TPF.
It also sounds like these three examples that you shared, the Legacy Foundation, the Legacy Fund for your dad, what your mom's doing with your aunts, what you're doing with Sema Teyze, they're not just one-time contributions. They're kind of designed to be lasting and growing, right? Both are important. One-time contributions, emergency situation, critical moment in time, those are important,
Yes, we
but
did that
also
with
creating
fire,
something
for
lasting.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that, for example, with the fires in Marmaris like 2
Yeah.
summers ago. That was one time immediate. There needed to be fires put out. And
Yeah.
so that was for that. But other than that, we tend to veer towards education. That helps, us funnel.
Education and something that's kind of lasting, right? So there's like a reoccurring kind
Definitely.
of accumulation of
Yeah.
which is also really interesting because if you're, I don't know how many students' lives you've touched already, but like that's a community that's growing,
Yeah.
through the efforts that you've created. Same is
Yeah.
going to happen with the symphony orchestra now. Same is going to happen through, all of Timur's efforts. It's really wonderful. So we're
Didem,
kind of, go
oh,
ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I was just gonna say, and it's like we're kind of talking about like big projects because these are great and amazing, but there's like such a element of like scale, right? Like small contributions done at scale can help in such big ways that like I think when we think about giving, it's not always about these big dollar amounts. The small dollar amounts, when done at scale, can make such a big impact on society that like and it's infectious in a
Mhm.
very good way,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
give $10, the next person gives $10, and then
Yeah.
those multiply to be millions of dollars, and then someone gets that they want to give back. Like it's such an infectious thing that you want to light it up a little bit and have it
Yeah.
spread. That's when it has the most impact, I think.
And it's amazing. I mean, I'm always in awe of how these nonprofit organizations really bootstrap and use, the penny to the nth degree of its value, right? So they're moving mountains, leveraging volunteer resources, this, that, like so much of our donations go to things that you have to buy with cash as opposed to all the other in-kind contributions and volunteer hours and brain power that's behind these initiatives. So it's much bigger than we think. Like that $10 maybe is triggering $100,000 worth of value. So you're right. I mean, every bit counts. Actually, now that we just talked about it too, you said how it's infectious. We are starting to see at TPF, these giving circles are starting, right? So groups of friends are coming together and saying, hey, let's pick 3 topics this year that we're all going to support. Or let's pick one topic that we're going to support for 5 years and let's do it together. So giving circles has become a new tool, I think, for people to pull together smaller resources so that they can have a bigger say maybe or a bigger influence in what they're trying to do. As we're wrapping up, I would like to do one last tour about what advice would you give to those who are just beginning their philanthropic journeys? How are they going to explore ways to make an impact? You said big or small, like how are they budgeting for this maybe? Can we do a tour of advice? Maybe we can start with Timur. Timur, should we start with you?
Sure. I would love to. I think again, so powerful, and I would say that these projects are very inspirational, and they can maybe be a little bit daunting in terms of thinking as you're starting on that path. Can I that scale? And I again, I don't ever necessarily feel like I'm doing so much or enough, but for me, what has felt good is to start something that I I uh, I feel great about. I'm excited about supporting, and with even a small amount, it has such a major impact. And I would like to call it, but I think with TPF and the focus on students and entrepreneurship, I always keep in mind how grateful I am to have my cross-cultural background and my immigrant background. And I joke, half joke, but not so joke, that people who have only lived in the US don't know how easy they've got it at times. And we
Mm.
think about some, immigrants of all stripes, but the challenges that we can face as students, with different economies, with different levels of capability. And so $10, $20, $100 can make such an impact in different areas. So that one bit of advice is just think about both the symbolic, but also the actual impact it can have if you're thinking about a particular student in Turkey that might be a recipient of it, right? It's both the symbolic value, but that value. And so start with something that feels good, that might be what you might call a no-brainer, and I think build from there. And I think you'll attach to particular projects. The idea of an orchestra, the idea of a forest, the idea of school is just beautiful, and I think you're going to naturally grow into that. So I think it's just like anything else, developing a muscle, and
Mhm.
that muscle will develop over time. So that would be my brief thoughts.
I really like that, developing a muscle. It is a skill and it's a muscle that you practice, you nurture, and then you build upon. I like that very much. Becca's, some advice from you, maybe on legacy giving, like how that would work, or
I mean, I think that, yeah, to feel like how you would like to, it's a really sad thing, obviously, with my father's death. He died at 62 years young.
young.
Uh, so it was young for us, and to be able to, turn our heartbreak into something that was at least, felt like we were doing something to help others, helped us through that mourning process, I would say. And I think the TPF team, I have to say, is really great. If you have any questions, I don't think you shouldn't hesitate to try and reach out to TPF and ask them for help with how you can go about your donating, because I think that you guys are really provide a good light for us. And one more thing I think is that, no sum is too small. $10 is 35 Turkish lira, yani, or 350 Turkish lira, yani sonuçta. So
Yeah.
a little bit goes a long way in Turkey, and we're a beautiful country. I mean, I'm born and raised in California. I've been living here for the last 18 or so years. And I think Turkey is an amazing place. And if you're living in America, we really need American funds to help make this place great again.
Yeah, even better, sure. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up with you as an insider perspective from TPF, as I'm also as a board member. Um, is there some advice that you would give people on how they might approach TPF, or how they might approach their just philanthropic journeys in general, but also how they might work with TPF better?
Yes, I'm personally inspired being in this panel today. I met Belkıs and Timur for the first time today, and their stories have given me so much inspiration. I hope that it's done the same for people listening to us today on this webcast. I think, as Timur has said, I think like start small, start anywhere, start something that's passionate to you, and do something that's sustained. Like in our Turkish culture, we have giving. It's part of our culture, right? Like we take care of the needy. We do this. And in America, we have a chance to do this in maybe a bigger way, you know, because we get tax deductions. We have an incredible organization like TPF, and we're very proud of our heritage. Like, let's find a way to give back to the country that has brought us here today. And as Becca said, you know, the country that Ataturk founded, and you know, they gave us all these chances to be who we are today. Approach TPF, directly give to the funds, come talk to us. There are many ways of doing this, from very small to very big, and all the options are there for us to do more inspirational things than what we
Yeah.
discussed today.
That's wonderful. I'm so impressed by the TPF team and their ability to create instruments essentially for different types of giving, whether they're running a campaign and you can donate $1, $5, $10, you know, kind of a general campaign for disaster relief, for example, or whether, you know, it's a legacy fund, a donor advised fund, maybe a giving circle. There are different tools that TPF can share with you, and different social impact agendas. Like TPF also has a lot of research and insight on what the needs are. So maybe you, when you're looking to explore different topics, whether it's environment, like Timur and the trees, or you know, whether it's education issues, whether it's music and the arts, like there's so many different ways and needs that can be explored through TPF and the research that they have. The other thing I'm going to mention, and this is a call out to TPF actually, is stemming from Uke's story. I know that we did the first few site visits in the past 2 years we've been doing them. I think that those are really important. Maybe we could do more of those. I feel like young people, a way to reconnect, especially like second generation, third generation Turkish Americans, is a way to reconnect and understand the country, not just as a tourist, but actually as someone who can kind of immerse themselves into what's happening in daily life. I think it would be really interesting. So maybe that's my call to action from TPF, more field trips to Turkey altogether. But, you know, for more information, you can contact the TPF website, tpfund.org. But in this season of giving and the season of loving, I'm going to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Ikubak, Timur, for the work that you guys are doing. Thank you to all of our listeners out there who made time to listen to this conversation today, which was, for me, was a really emotional one. I always get to host these the Voices of Partner sessions, but this one was really touching on a both emotional and spiritual level. So thank you so much, and happy holidays to everyone around the world.
Thank you.
Here's